Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world today. My name's Paul Webb, I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and you are listening to Energy Speaks Back. Energy Speaks Back interviews energy experts from around the world. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to episode 27 of Energy Speaks Back. Weekly, I present to you experts from around the world, and today we are in the USA interviewing a fellow energy podcaster team. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. This is the first time I've interviewed a team before on my podcast, so it's the first time for everything. My guests today bring the world of energy and sustainability and legality to life in the newly launched podcast, Oil and Gas Elevate. They are both becoming inspirational figures in our industry. All this with the courtesy of their amazing sponsor, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises. So without any further ado, I give you the Oil and Gas Elevate podcast team, Sean Mccoy and Eric Johnson. Good afternoon, Sean and Eric, and how are you both today?
Living the dream is what I always say.
Doing excellent. Thanks for having us on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. And you notice I hesitated when I said good afternoon, because I know it isn't good afternoon for you, is it?
No, we're down in Texas. Both of us are down in Houston, so we're a few hours behind. But we've been around this conversation enough to know that we know what you mean for sure.
Yeah, I'm still drinking coffee, but good morning, good afternoon.
Hence the satellite delay. You need more coffee in you. I interviewed Janine Scott the other day, and she said, I need more coffee before I come onto this show. So I know what you're both feeling. I normally like to start. We're going to start the same way as I normally start, but I'm going to have to break it up a little bit because I've never interviewed two people at one time. So let's see how we go today. So, Sean, you're the lead man, I think. Sorry, Eric, if he isn't the lead man. But Sean, can you give us some background about yourself, and then we'll hear about Eric.
So 18 years in oil and gas in terms of that, in terms of how you and I met through our podcast that Eric and I co-host. A bunch of different experiences now on upstream, downstream, and manufacturing, sales and business development, things of that nature, a bunch of different things. I started my own business for a couple of years and then came back into the oil and gas industry itself, spent some time in the military. I've been very fortunate to travel. I've been over to your neck of the woods. I've been across the pond, and the UK is definitely one of my favorite places to visit. I just absolutely love it. As far as just the people, the culture, the transportation, getting around on the trains and on the tube with my Oyster card and minding the gap and all of that good stuff. And so, family, married, kids, just living the dream, as I said. That's all part of it. And I just have a passion for what else we're doing in the world besides just making money and besides just profit in terms of business and social responsibility and things of that nature. It's been a big part of my life, which has led into this podcast and what we're doing there. And I'm happy to be partnered with my new buddy, Eric, who we've become fast friends, and we joke around that we've become like stepbrothers in a short period of time. It's been a beautiful ride. Just happy to be here. Yeah.
So we're going to hear Eric's side of that story, but so how did you meet Eric before we go?
So when I first started the podcast, I was hired on by the Oil and Gas Global Network, and Mark LaCour, who's our editor in chief, gave me a name to call, and he was a guy who was connected in 20 plus years in the industry as an M&A lawyer, and was on this ESG advisory staff for their firm, and they were doing some things. So my first thought was, great, he could be a guest and a potential resource down the road. And then after we started talking, the connection was, I started to realize that it was more than just a hobby or more than just anything else. And then also his enthusiasm and also his knowledge and his expertise and the ability to maybe help offset that image of what a lawyer is as well. Cause I was like, I like this guy. He's great. He's wonderful. We joke about that too. And so I just kind of one day said, hey,
lawyers. Let me just jump in. I hate lawyers, by the way.
All right.
and I just kind of said, hey, it was like kind of an odd question. Like, would you have any interest in want to host this with me? Cause I just think kind of in lieu of our podcast and like having you on and others, I can talk. I have no problem with that. But the chorus of voices and other people and listening to what they have to say and getting those viewpoints really creates a harmony and does a lot for the listener as well.
Yeah. And Eric, so let's hear from your side of the story. And
well,
now I know that you're a lawyer as such. I'm a bit nervous.
Don't cut me off.
You didn't tell me that before.
Well, Paul, let's be clear. Sean is the man. He does have an extreme passion for this. And when I first met Sean and kind of experienced that passion firsthand and saw his experience in the podcasting world and what he wanted to accomplish, I was obviously very intrigued and excited to be a part of it. But he does, behind the scenes and in front of the mic and in front of the camera, if we're on Zoom or whatnot, he definitely is in charge of the show. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm glad, as Sean says, to add another voice, maybe a little different perspective. And I think that brings a little bit of punch and different variety. To elevate, which I think we've really hit our stride on. But yes, I am a lawyer. I've been practicing for 21 years, do M&A and capital markets work for Winston & Strawn here in Houston, Texas. And I do co-chair Winston's worldwide ESG advisory team, which, as Sean mentioned, is kind of how we met through kind of LinkedIn and things we were doing with respect to ESG. Online. So when Sean and I met, he kind of described to me what he was doing. And I was like, no, this is something that could really, really take off. Even though I hadn't historically been a big podcast listener. I knew that there was a lot of podcasts in the space that were focused more on interviews, kind of with C-suite and talking about high level stuff. And Sean had this vision for doing this case study where we could actually drill down into actual real world tangible success stories in the business that were directed towards ESG. And that just really clicked with me for some reason. And then to kind of see Sean's passion for it, I was like, all right, this is something I really want to be a part of. If you had told me a year ago that I would be on a podcast that was getting thousands of downloads per episode, I would have told you were crazy. And a lot of people would have laughed and said, why would he do that? That's not something he would be any good at. But it's been an awesome journey. I have 3 kids, 20, 18, and 16. One's a sophomore at Texas A&M, 2 in high school. And they hopefully they have no idea that I'm on a podcast, because I can only imagine the reviews that would come through. But it's been exciting to be a part of it. I'm super excited about Oil and Gas Global Network. I think they've got a vision for even more content on different platforms, just to tell the stories about the industry. And just it's going to be a fun ride, I think.
Yeah. And obviously I was a guest on your show, which I thought was just an amazing experience. And if it wasn't for you two, I wouldn't be doing podcasting now, because I had such a buzz off the back of doing that. It just inspired me to go and take the next step. And I wanted to do podcasting, but I didn't really know where to start. So I did start to research it. And yeah, you guys are the guys that pushed my buttons and directed me. So thank you very much for doing that.
I mean, it's definitely a buzz. And that wasn't something I expected after we did some of our first ones. We'd get done and Sean would be on cloud 9 bouncing off the walls. And even I would feel it. I'm the lawyer one. I'm the reserved, more conservative one, right? But even I could feel it. And then Sean makes fun of me. I do drink coffee in the mornings, but pre-podcast episodes, I down at least 2 or 3 Red Bulls. So if you see me bouncing off the walls, it's because of the Red Bull.
That's the Red Bull, yeah. The Red Bull's talking.
Yeah, we need Red Bull as a sponsor, Sean. I want to
we could. Well, yeah, yeah. And I'm glad to hear that, Paul. I'm glad to hear that it inspired, and I hope that others that are out there that are inspired by this. And for a long time, I was a listener way back in the mid 2000s and stuff. So I listened to podcasts for years, and it was always kind of famous people. And so you kind of think to yourself that it's kind of beyond, who's going to listen to me kind of thing. And then on the top of that, you start to find out that you can actually be on all parts of this world. You can be a guest, you can be a host, you can listen. And it's really a beautiful medium because it goes beyond kind of the structured limitations that typical media has right now in terms of that. I mean, it's starting to change a bit. The Wi-Fi televisions are coming in, cable networks, less and less viewers, but they do still have a strong audience. But it's that chance to connect personally. And I think that's why it feels so therapeutic, because now you're really hearing, they're in your ear. You get to hear their tone. I say this all the time to upcoming guests, because they start to wonder about the experience and if they have what it takes. But for people to hear you and hear your story about like when you came on and why you're so passionate about energy efficiency for businesses, why it matters to you, that versus just reading it, which is still a great medium, but listening to people talk about it just really has a profound
hearing the
effect.
Passion, hearing the passion in their voices. I had a Jenny Bailey was on my show. I recorded, does Bumblebees. She's the author of DB the Bee. And she's written, she wants to take this into the schools and educate. The passion that was coming through, just watching her on Zoom was just amazing. You know, you could feel it in her voice. It was just, and I'm getting so much reward from doing this. It's unbelievable, really. You know, it's an amazing journey. Tell us more about Elevate and what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve.
Well, I think the best place to start is in the core subject, which is around ESG. You know, so you may have heard this acronym. Sometimes you use it, and we assume everybody knows, but it stands for environmental, social, and governance. And really, it's been something it's been a part of business for a long time. You may have heard it referred to as things like corporate social responsibility or socially responsible investing. But really, the core of it and the crux of it is, what else is a business doing besides making money? And I think for a very long time, in the Western world especially, we've been at the altar of Milton Friedman, that the social responsibility of a company is to be profitable. And then that sentence usually has a period. And I believe, and I think we're seeing this now, it should have been a comma. Yes, and as Eric and I talk about, you know, the business has to be sustainable for it to incorporate sustainability practices as well. Like you can't give away the farm kind of thing. It has to be this circular kind of systemic approach to what you're doing. You can't ignore the factors that matter, like economics, pure economics and whatnot. And I think what this is saying as well is, yes, that's true, but you also can't ignore the fact that there's a human being in every part of what we're doing, and that those human beings have different experiences. They have different expectations. They're exposed to different things. They're limited by different things. I think for a long time, the need to be successful economically, and the fact that we've been so, you know, overall had such massive growth economically and socially over the last, you know, decades, we've really not allowed for room for the human side. It's kind of an afterthought. It's like, after I make all the money, then I'm going to donate something, and if I give to the local whatever, it makes things better. But what people are really talking about, what this really is, I think, is it's bringing in those elements. What are you going to do about, you know, sexuality in the workplace? What do you do about diversity and inclusion? What are you going to do about the actual resources, back to what you talk about all the time, which is just resource efficiency? You know, that's really what I think the environment side is what are you doing with these gifts that we're given, and how are you tempering them, and how are you managing them overall in relation to what you're doing? Because the other side is we need these things as well. This isn't, you know, there's a lot of luxury right now, but there's some baseline needs as well that are part of that are extensions of that. We have our own existence in terms of where we are from a Western side. We have the developing world, which far outnumbers the current group of us that are in this side as well. And we talk about privilege a lot. So I think it's kind of a long-winded answer, and I know I tend to be that way, but this is such a unique aspect and a unique opportunity for us to have a cultural shift, not just save the rainforest because somebody told us we should do that, or let's just be nice to people because that's what my mom told me to do. This is really about, this is about people. This is how we interact. This is how we're going to continue to interact, and what are the challenges around that. And as those things evolve, back to another phrase we like to use, and that's one that Eric brought for sure, this energy evolution around how we manage to have that happen. And really trying to explore that and see what people, because we know the oil and gas industry specifically in that framework has a lot to lament. We just do. We've been at this for a long time. There's lots of cases of things that we've done that have made the world a better place. You can read something like The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels by like Epstein very easily. And then there's a dozen other books that'll tell you, yes, but what about all these other things that have happened geopolitically and whatnot? Yeah. So there's a need to lament as well. But I also think this idea of elimination, I think we don't use the word transition because that tends to give people this impression that one is going to go away and replace the other. Fundamentally, natural gas, hydrocarbons are different than any other energy source. They're not singular in their application. And so I think there's a bit of a naivete in terms of trying to eliminate one versus the other. And though I understand the good guy and bad guy roles, but it's just, we don't believe in that either. So it's how are we going to coexist? How are we going to become synergistic? How are we going to have energy, however that comes, be the overall umbrella that we're all operating in? And then how do we manage not only the economics, but how do we manage the environment, the gifts that we're given, the social aspects, the human element, which is extremely complicated. And then the governance, which is always the one that people put last, but really should probably be in the front because that starts to dictate the culture and the infrastructure. How are those things going to play out, both on a small, medium, and large scale throughout all the world's economy and culture? And We're just trying to be a little cog in that wheel to kind of say stories of people that are stories of business that are doing something, and as well as bringing awareness around people like yourself and around, technology, what's coming new, what's electric cars like, what are batteries like, these other areas as well, and give our listeners a chance to become aware of something that they don't know, with the hope that it'll equip them going forward to make good decisions, both personally and professionally. So, and I promise I'm done at that point.
No,
Eric, you're on deck. Go ahead, Eric.
That's an awesome answer. Eric, do you want to add to that? Is there anything you want to?
One of the things I love about Sean, and one of the reasons we become really good friends, is the passion part that we talked about earlier. And you can see it when he starts to talk. He'll get on a roll and just lay out an excellent groundwork. But I do want to expand on something he hit on at the very end, which I think is why the podcast is important to me, important to Sean, I think important to the industry. It's awareness. As we think about what's driving these issues now, whether it be the investor class and whether or not they're going to give money to the business anymore, traditional oil and gas, whether it just be a PR issue, which is what it was historically, I think, largely just some negative news coverage with respect to, dirty oil and gas, right? But now the investor class is in there and they're saying, okay, we only want to invest in certain things that make us, for lack of a better word, feel good about ESG issues, right? And that's true of pensions funds, and it's true of the millennial retail investor who put their money in an ESG ETF, right? And so it's really across the scale. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that the industry has maybe struggled a little bit with is telling the story of what the industry is actually doing on the ESG front, because there are, and that's the whole purpose of our case study, there are some amazing success stories. They might be in technologies with respect to electrification of the oil field and, carbon emission reductions. They might be carbon capture stories. They might be new technologies like hydrogen and other things. There's also some amazing things going on in the S&G buckets as well that Sean touched on, whether that be, volunteering in the community like our PDC episode, whether it be diversity and inclusion initiatives and programs like that. Things that have been going on in the background that we just haven't tooted the horn enough about, and people need to know about it. And for me, it's not an attempt to tell people, hey, we're doing this all right. That's not really my objective. We do want to pat ourselves on the back, but what I hope really happens is that it piques people's interest. Somebody who maybe hasn't done something or maybe hasn't thought that something was even doable has been inspired and encouraged to take themselves personally, but also take their organization or institution and go out and make change. So if somebody comes along and watches an episode that we just scratch the surface of what's happening in a technology or a process that's all ESG driven, or an initiative or a program or policy inside of a company, and that tickles, their interest just enough to where they then go out and talk amongst their friends, talk amongst their coworkers, talk to the C-suite, and it drives them to action. That's what I hope happens from the show, that people can grab onto that and be inspired and encouraged to go out and make some change. So that's what I'm excited about. Every time we do a case study and I meet these amazing people, whether they be entrepreneurs, whether they be old school oil and gas, and they're putting forward these initiatives and programs and new tech, I'm blown away by some of the things that we're doing and the passion that they have. And it gets me excited to just tell those stories. And I can see the passion in them when they're telling it. And then I can also see the passion. We have this kind of insight segment that goes along with our case study, a second voice that comes in and kind of talks about it. And you can see their passion, and it's just contagious. So that's what I'm excited about. To me, that's what Elevate is about. ESG is the subject matter. Inspiration is our objective. So it's been really cool to be a part of it.
I like what you said about the encouragement and the inspiration, because that's what I'm trying to do, is encourage people to make the right decisions and to do the right thing, and inspire people to say, oh, that company's doing that. We should be doing that. Why aren't we doing that? Right. And it's that whole idea. You can't tell people, you can't force them to do things. There's lots of policy around globally that tells us what we should be doing, but I think it hasn't got enough teeth to actually drive it. But then we need to rely on the encouragement side and encourage organisations to take those steps. And I like those words. I remember when you interviewed me, you liked some of the words I was saying regarding energy being precious and things like that. But I'm playing back the compliments as such, but I'm picking up on those points because I think they're key. It's the inspiration and the encouragement side. So who's your target audience? Where are we pitching this podcast to go to?
Yeah, so the hope is, I mean, there's a human and there's a financial capital issue inside the industry right now, and especially when you get younger, and even people within the industry who are still staying in it. I mean, people like myself, like I mean, this is a personal question I have. What are we doing? Nobody wants to be, we watch Star Wars. Nobody wants to be on the side of Darth Vader and the stormtroopers. It may be fun to dress up for Halloween and entertain kids and stuff, but nobody wants to be on the bad side. Nobody thinks that they're on the bad side. So I think in that frame, you just want to make sure that what you're doing and how you're doing it is in such a way that it's meant to educate. It's meant to bring that story up to them so they can kind of decide what to do with it versus trying to influence. I think we have a huge issue right now socially that, and I think people that are younger, the target audience that we're looking at between 25 and 55, we say that, but anybody can press play. So if you're 56, you can still listen. And if you're 24, you can too. But we say those metrics because we're hoping for the first salvo to be that group of people inside the industry who are, when they go to Thanksgiving dinner with their family, or they go out to the bar with their friends or whatnot, when they start having this conversation and somebody starts saying, hey, and this happens, I think, quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Oh, you work for so-and-so. Oh, you're part of the reason that the world is crumbling. You're causing death and destruction. You just care about money and things of that nature. That verbiage and being told that you're part of that. And I've even had those conversations recently and being told in no uncertain terms how, that some people just really don't care what the industry is doing as well. This is a big image problem. And so we're hoping to start internal with the industry, the people that are in it, and say, can you have something that you can at least draw from? We call it elevate. We try not to influence. I think there's too much influence out there. We're just going to put it out there. Like you were saying, Paul, you have to decide what to do with it. Our job is to find the purest form of that, to be as unbiased as possible. We have our own experiences and stuff that we bring to the table, but we try to be as balanced as possible and let the story stand for itself. That's why we go back to this real thing. Like this has happened, right? PDC has done this, Silver Wolf has done this, Gunner Energy Services has done this. And that's just, we kind of leave it at that so that target audience in there can at least have something else to go off of. And instead of being an ad hominem or some sort of like finger pointing or whatever, if it wasn't for us, you'd freeze to death and then start arguing about windmills and all the rest of stuff. Stuff that doesn't do any good. It just doesn't move the needle or have even the potential of it. So that's our kind of a target audience between probably 25 and 55, but we're open to anybody to listen. And we try to do it in such a way that anybody can, not just people in the industry as well.
Yeah. My audience is probably older because obviously I'm talking to energy experts around the world. So, and I can see them being, some of the people I've even spoken to, this guy today is 80 years of age and he's still passionate and delivering energy management to his country. I think that's awesome. So I think I take it up a little bit high, but I'm trying to also go down lower, whereby I want to bring young students into the industry, and there's many of them coming through. And I'm getting that because I'm doing talks with universities as well. So what other media? So you do the podcast. What's the frequency of that at the moment?
So we try, I guess, Sean, we can talk a little bit about the format and the frequency and where we're headed. But the goal is, again, if the goal is inspiration and encouragement, what we want to do is find as many case studies as we can and roll them out as frequently as we can. So right now what we do is we release an episode every Tuesday with that case study segment. So we can tell somebody's success story, have them come in and talk again about these amazing technologies and whatnot. We have some other formats and some other programming stuff that Sean can speak to a little bit more, but that we want to bring out as well. An opportunity for Sean and I to bring in other experts kind of slightly outside the case study format. And we would drop, an episode like that during the month as well. So, our goal is we want people to stay in tune. We want them to keep their attention and we want to continue to inspire. And so our goal is to, on a regular basis, once a week, every Tuesday, drop a new episode and filter in some other programming things as well that we think are unique or different. And to expand on what, something you just mentioned earlier, Paul, and kind of talking about the demographic and who we're targeting, you talked about talking at universities. And I think Sean's 100% right. That target audience, if you think about it, is 25 to 55 for us. And I think the inner circle is traditional oil and gas people. But as we think about human capital issues inside the business, and look, Sean and I don't think oil and gas is going anywhere. So who are the engineers and scientists and others that are going to help us keep running the oil and gas business? So Sean and I have really pivoted, I think, of late when we think about our focus to one of the things we really want to focus on is that university student. And just anecdotally, and I've discussed this with Sean before, I think we've discussed it on the podcast before, my son is a sophomore at Texas A&M. He's got friends that are in engineering and in the business school and others, and they are not anti-oil and gas by any means. But when you ask them about what their vision of their future is, what they want to work in, traditional oil and gas is not necessarily going to come up. And so one of the things when we talk about inspiring people is, hey, that 18 to 22-year-old demographic matters as well. And it's even more than inspiration. It's giving them, I think as Sean kind of hit on already, is this, give them the confidence and the knowledge and the pride to say, hey, I can go into something like oil and gas because this provides energy to the world. This is, I think when we think a little bit about energy elitism in North America and Europe, and our ability because of our affluence and wealth to in some ways pivot away from oil and gas and be able to use wind farms and be able to use solar farms and other stuff. But when you think about billions of people in India and Africa and otherwise, the best way to give them energy abundance, we talked to Olu about this so much, Sean, and it really inspired me, but to give them energy abundance, like we enjoy here in the United States, or we enjoy in the UK or Europe, that's going to take oil and gas, and it's going to take really smart people in engineering and science and otherwise and geology to help us continue to do that. And so for me, one of our target audiences, and one of the things I really want to focus on, is getting that 18 to 22-year-old engineering student who may think oil and gas is something he would never want to do, that she would never want to do, and actually turn a light on for them and show them some of the really cool things that are happening in oil and gas. So, as we think about demographics, yeah, it's 25 to 55, but man, if we can tap into that younger generation that's coming up, that's something Sean and I really want to do. We want to inspire those kids, and I call them kids because, man, I'm getting old now.
Yeah, me too.
But inspire those kids to say, hey, that's actually pretty cool. I love what some of the super majors are doing in X, Y, and Z, and I want to be a part of that. So
I started in this industry when I was a kid at 16, and I think it's been such a cool career. Some of the places I've been into to check whether the lights have been turned on, that I'm simplifying it totally. Yeah. I've been in some really, really cool places. I've been into some amazing manufacturing, and everywhere I've gone, that person that's been showing me around is passionate about their building and showed me what that building does and how it works and what they do there, which has been even better because I've even gained knowledge. I remember I'd done an energy survey in a hotel in Scotland. The guy he was a historian. He told me all about Wallace. He took me up on the roof. He pointed out where all the battles were. To have something like that, and I remember that very clearly. And that's probably 10 years ago I did that survey. And it's just amazing. And it's the most coolest industry ever, I think. And if I went back to being 16 again, which would be very nice, knowing what I know now, I'd say, what do you want to do? Do you want to go and work in a shop? Do you want to be a banker? Do you want to be a trader? No, I want to go into energy. I'd do it all again. I think it's been an awesome career. I loved it. And I'm 57. I'm still talking about it. So there you go.
Well, and I think you alluded to something, Paul, that pride, that we sometimes take for granted. One of the shows that we have over here in the States, and I think it's over there in Europe as well, but the Undercover Boss. I think that part of the reason at first I started watching that show, but then I stopped because the C-suite people always had such a revelation. They couldn't believe that this low-level employee was this excited about their job and their business and the company. And as somebody who worked for like a big company like Schlumberger in my time, I think it gets lost that if you give them something to be proud of, if you give them something to be, and that's part of what our mission is too, because there are people that aren't proud to be a part of this, and they see and they've seen things, and there's a history there that we have to understand. We have to take into account. They've seen a lot of things over the years. My dad was in it before. I mean, I saw the ups and downs of the industry from the time I was born here in Houston. So there's lots of reasons to jump off the ship and say no mas. And I get that. But at the same time, back to what Eric was talking about, there is a, if you want to right the ship, if you really want to, if you think there's an opportunity to do something, back to what that's why you want to go back into it again, I would say, is because there's a chance to make a difference in that area, because somebody has to do it. And if nobody's doing something, nothing is something as well in this action. So if it can create that opportunity, we're excited about that as well.
Yeah, I agree. So is there anything, Eric alluded to different parts of the program, can you share that with us today?
Oh yeah, sure. So when you came on, we had this idea of kind of segmenting, from a listener standpoint, you could get 15 to 20 minutes per segment, and that way you're not stuck on listening to the whole thing at once. It's not some long, hour plus conversation. We can obviously both talk, and those opportunities are amazing, and they're great. From the amount of information we want to get out there, we knew we couldn't just do long form all the time. So we had the talking point, which you came into, we had the case study, and then the insight. And then there's also an element that we started to recognize as we started to get into this, of what we'd call kind of our journey, our evolution, and our desire to want to connect with our listeners, as well as also acquiescing. There's an edge. There's an edge to the ESG industry. It is everywhere now in terms of especially the circles we're in. It's dominating. I mean, you go on Clubhouse, you go on LinkedIn, you go to lunch, doesn't matter. People are talking about it, and there's all these experts, and there's people that, there's all these things that are being talked about, all this pressure, real financial pressure, real execution, real concern around it. And so there's a desire for us, and because all these stories are great, but they're not kind of like, if you're trying to know what to know and you go to us for that kind of information, you may not get a lot of that. It may be subtle. So the idea is to do the case studies, and then we're going to alternate once we kind of get the frequency going to where we want to do the talking points by themselves. And we also want to do what we call an accelerate episode, which Eric came up with the title. It'll be a bonus on Thursday, probably 20, 25 minutes at the most. Eric and I are going to kind of talk about where we are in this journey and how far what we've learned, and kind of reflect. As Eric was mentioning, we don't want to come across as Alex Trebek, who's like, oh, you didn't know that? Like of course we knew this, because we don't want to have that. We want to kind of bring the listener along and say, we're learning as well, we're evolving as well, here's what we've come across and where we've changed, and then really go and get like a pulse and ask. We've been very fortunate to connect with lots of people, ESG consultants, investor relation consultant, people that are at that front edge every day and kind of know they're in these boardrooms with companies. They're out there in the, in this, from the social standpoint, out with companies and organizations. They're consulting, and they're looking at these metrics. They're part of that process. And so I want to bring them in and kind of get really like what's going on. Tell us what's the current thing. So as a listener, I know, hey, first Thursday of the month, I go hit play, get an idea of where things are going, a little recap on some of the episodes maybe. And then I get two people, experts, are going to tell me some quick boom things that I could know going into today that might help my job. And so we're trying to, and then the talking point part, like with yours, because it is it's a difference from the case study, but man, we want to know, people need to know that. So we want to dedicate one of the weeks. We're going to come in and do a couple of talking points and let those sit by themselves so the listener can hear them independently and kind of go, all right, that's enough for me to chew on, instead of trying to do that and then go into a case study as well. It could get confusing, or we're just trying to streamline it for the listener and trying to become more efficient as far as that. We're trying to.
I like that. As well. It's a good idea.
Yeah,
I like the a couple quick thoughts. I like packaging the talking points together. It's almost like a little buffet of little nuggets that you can decide you want to listen to. There's 2 or 3 people that are on, and you can sit down and, if you want to listen to Paul Webb talk about how much energy we waste on the back end, you can do that, right? And then you can listen to somebody else. And then the case study and insights can stand alone. And I am excited about the accelerate part. I will concede that my viewpoints on a handful of topics inside the ESG space have probably done some 180s based just on what I've heard from people. And I think Sean mentioned this earlier. You come to this world naturally, as all of us do, with biases and prejudices. Your own life experience, your own situation puts blinders on sometimes to what's going on around the world. I think the one, and we've already talked about it, was our episode Sean with Olu, right, which just really opened my eyes and his life story and just energy abundance versus energy scarcity in certain parts of the world, and we've just become so spoiled, for lack of a better word, in the United States and in Europe with what we have. And of course, for the, as everybody I'm sure has heard about, the Texas ice apocalypse from 2 or 3 weeks ago, when basically all of Texas lost power. What an eye-opening experience for us to now live without, right? And so as I think about the Accelerate episodes to come and think about the opportunity to reflect on the people we've talked to and the journeys we've heard and the successes, but also the challenges, right? Sometimes you hear some of the challenges that have been overcome. And you're like, wow, I never had to climb that hill. And to hear people tell their stories has really changed my perspective on a lot of things. So Sean and I think, are looking forward to kind of sharing that. We want people to hear our own evolution, as we like to say. I am not this same person I was 6 months ago when I started with Sean. And in all honesty, that may be the greatest benefit of all of this. I love the content we're pushing out. I love that we're inspiring, but I actually think I am better in tune to what reality is around the energy industry and what people really need. And so just excited to be a part of that.
Brilliant. And so at this stage of my podcast, I normally drop one into the group as such, or into my interview. You've listened to my podcast, so you know what I'm going to be saying. Is there anything, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but is there anything that you can give? I'll ask Sean this question first of all, as a takeaway today for our listeners, that they can take away from you personally.
That you matter, that your vote matters, whether it's economic or from a government bureaucratic kind of standpoint. That your position in this, people are listening. You can do something. You have an ability to contribute, whether it's educating yourself and then it's using that education and that awareness to then turn around and turn the lights off or explore other ways of doing things, or what is the impact that I'm having, and also that it's okay to change and it's okay to evolve as well, and that's part of the that's really a big part of the process, and it should be happening. It's the old lament about things. Things never change. Things never stay the same. They always change. That's a good thing for things to change. I think embrace the evolution. It may be difficult. Like, our lives have all been different. I was 24 when I first got a cell phone, and now I can't go anywhere without it, which is sad. I don't know if it's a good or bad evolution as far as that one particularly, but overall, don't be afraid to challenge what you know, and then understand that if we can last thing about this, because this is a big part of it too. If the situation you believe exists, it calls to the elimination of something else, whether it's a person. I'm not saying that bad things have to exist. I'm just saying if the formula that you're presenting this has to go away completely, and everything about it and anything associated with it is evil or bad. There's no room for growth there. There's no room for synergy. There's no room for harmony there. And that going against this argument that it has to be us or them, me or you, oil or solar, any of the rest of the stuff. It's not. It's more than that. And it's the ability. Can we evolve into this area where we can be truly synergistic? And this is no small thing. I'm not trying to be Gandhi and just I'm not trying to act like I don't understand the difficulties of it. But the other side of or one of the other options is just not doing anything. And I don't believe I think that's even worse. So join hands, reach across the table to somebody who may be different than you, maybe in a different area than you, and think something differently than you. And like Eric was saying, allow that challenge to push. And if it moves the needle, be okay with that.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Love it. Go on, Eric.
The one thing I would add is to be, if you're in the energy industry, whether that's traditional oil and gas or maybe on the renewable side or whatever, I would, but especially if you're in old school oil and gas, I would encourage people to be proud of what they're a part of, to be proud of the way we have transformed the world with power, with mobility, with refined products. You think about what's happened during the COVID crisis, much of that is driven by refined products, right? Whether it be PPE, whether it be, so many things in healthcare and otherwise, right? So I would tell people to be proud of what they're part of. You're literally saving lives. You're literally making people's lives better. We realize that the world's evolving and that we're going to change, but be proud of what you're a part of, be willing and ready to partner with others as we go through the evolution, but be proud and be inspired and get out there and plug in is what I would suggest to people.
Awesome. They're great answers. And, I love the be proud, and I like the collaboration side of it as well. Bringing all that together is just a great answer. So thank you very much for that. And I must say, look, thank you for finding the time today, getting up early, drinking a little bit of coffee, and go and get some coffee. And you don't get no Red Bull, Eric. I'll see you last time.
I'll say that for after lunch, Red Bull after lunch.
Let's look, thank you very much for your time today. I'm honored to have you on my show because, you led the way for me. So thank you very much for that as well. So, it's been great seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it.
Right. So be safe as well, you and your family, and we will obviously keep in contact. So take care. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Cheers.
Thank you for listening today, and thank you to my special guest. And if you want to know more about managing your third largest expense, please go to our website on b2benergy.co.uk. That leaves me with one more thing to say. Be safe.